Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Thompson along with my returning partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Welcome back.
How you doing, my man? It snowed today. Yeah, I think it snowed for you too.
Terribly.
What the hell's going on? Miserable. I just wanted sunshine and draft talk. That's all I was looking for today, and I got a bunch of snow, man.
And we're joined by a special guest that everyone here listening, I'm sure, is aware, whether you're aware of his work on Locked On Bills, the Draft Dude, senior draft analyst from the Draft Network, Joe Marino. Joe, how are we doing?
Doing good, guys. I didn't see any snow here in Charlotte.
Is it not snowing in Charlotte?
No, it didn't. It was like 70. You know, we went to the park today, took a walk. I have no idea what you're talking about.
So no joke. Most people listening know I live in Cleveland. I live just off of the lake, and no joke. We went to bed last night. I could see a little bit coming down. I knew it was going to get cold, and we're like, all right, no big deal. It was 70 on Sunday. It was 83 on Friday. And my wife and I wake up, and I start laughing. There was 6 inches of snow outside. There's still snow now. It's still snowing right now. I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, it's all melted here in the 716 as far as I know. But there was a good 4 or 5 inches this morning. I was mad, and I like snow, and I'm a big fan of the winter season. I was pretty pissed this morning when I saw 6 inches, but it melted pretty quick up here.
Yeah, it's just this guy. I had put away things. I feel bad. People who had planted really nice flowers and stuff like that. It was devastating for a bunch of people. But
yeah.
Anyways, the reason that we're talking tonight is, Joe, it's draft season. This is your day. Your Christmas is upon us. It's not quite Christmas Eve. We're almost there. As we go through everything that's involved in this, I think there's a lot of people that are way closer to this, to Aaron and I, in the realm of this world where, hey, the season goes on and you start playing around a little bit and it's interesting as a Bills fan. Oh, hey, we didn't start our mock drafts until February this year, instead of starting them in mid-December when the season's already over. Help the fans out a little bit here. What's it like when this is truly your job and your role? When do you start looking at prospects, and what is that build up like getting to this crescendo a week before the show?
It's a journey, let me tell you that. I think it's a different dynamic. We start our process in the second 2 weeks of May. So we take the first 2 weeks of May, we reflect on everything that happened in the draft cycle that just happened, and then we push reset and we start again. And in May, we start our initial summer scouting, where we take the national scouting list and we have regions of the country that you're responsible for. You got to watch your players. You got to write them up. And that takes a long time. By the time you're done with that, it's right at the time for the season to start. You pay attention to your region throughout the entire season. At the end of the season, you write up the players in your region. And then when you get done with that, we start expanding to the entire country. So from May until January, I was focused on ACC, AAC, South Carolina, Tennessee, and LSU. And then once we got to the cross-check season, I got a chance to start looking at the rest of the country. And here I am, late April, done, right? I've looked at all the players that I'm going to look at. So it's a long process. And I think the fun part with us doing it the way that we do is you're so focused on your region for so long. It feels like a new process starting in January while I'm watching Big Ten guys and Pac-12 and Big 12 guys. So that helps it stay fresh. But I'll tell you, I'm ready for next week.
Once you get to that sort of cross-referencing where you're starting to get into the other guys outside of your region, behind the scenes, what's that like with the other scouts and probably the referencing that goes back and forth? Because I know a little bit in Cover One how those conversations go between the guys when they're crossing prospects and, what did you see and what do you see at the next level? And sometimes it turns into arguments, but I think it's the creative juices that get going. Is that really where you guys are all thriving and the best of the best is going on there?
Yeah, I love it. So the way that it works is, it's time for us to do cross checks. And so we have 4 full-time guys, myself, Kyle Krabs, Dre Harris, who was a 7-year NFL scout with the Chiefs and Patriots. And then we also have Jordan Reed. And then we have Brentley Wiseman, former NFL scout with the Los Angeles Chargers, did some work with New England Patriots as well and the UCLA Bruins. And so we go into it and it's like, okay, here's the 3 players we're doing. And it's 3 players. And if he's in your region, You present them to the group, and everyone comes into the meeting that day having done the film work. You grade them. You take the average of the 4 grades. That's the final grade for the player. But it's really exciting because in that room, you have those 4 guys plus Brentley. And then we also had 2 NFL players that externed with us this year. So we had Andrew Dowell from the New Orleans Saints, and we had John Wetzel. It's like a 9-year offensive lineman, most recently for the Atlanta Falcons. Those guys were in our meetings every day watching the players with us. So that was an extremely cool layer to say, hey, how would that guy fit into your defense? You know, if you were playing up against this guy, what would your coaches tell you? How would they factor in? How would you game plan against Jalen Waddle or Devonta Smith or Jamar Chase or, whatever player? So we had so many layers, so many eyes on these prospects this year. I feel like, I don't know, the hay's in the barn. Like we've had every conversation you can have about these guys, and we've hit it through so many different lenses. And it's interesting because even though we have the same criteria that we grade the players from, it's interesting how much disagreement we have. Right. I think about Javonte Williams, who I think is one of the best 3 running backs in this class. Clear second-round grade for me. Dre Harris didn't see him that way. Dre Harris thinks he's a rotational power back, and I'm like, okay, and so
well, especially when it's somebody that you respect their opinion, and you're saying, it's not just like some guy replying in Twitter, like it's another guy that puts in the work and knows what he's watching. That's got to be interesting to debate guys like that.
So this guy's taking paychecks from Scott Pioli and John Dorsey, and I'm questioning him. It's been great. It's been really good to really broaden our full perspective on these players. We've learned a lot from each other.
So this is a good question from Charles Gutfried, I think. Right here. Do you end up with more of my guys from your region talking about Javonte Williams? He's in your region. Is there a little bias in your own region?
There's no doubt. I've been working on those players for half a year. You know what I mean? By the time I have the conversation with the other guys, I've summer scouted them. I paid attention to them all season long. I've written my final email. Certainly you're going to feel some type of way about your guys, but I think that's fun about how that balances it out. What's funny to me is how you go into a watch, like there's players from Kyle's region in the Big Ten where, he's been working on this guy for 6 months. I spend, 3 hours on him. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, geez. Well, you start to ask yourself questions. But, yeah, you definitely have an inherent bias towards the players that you've been working on. And you feel like, that's the thing is you go into this meeting. And I know that I have to be able to answer the questions that these guys have. I know the questions Dre is going to ask me. I know what Andrew's going to ask me. And so you better watch that player to a level where you're comfortable looking these other guys in the eye and saying, yeah, this is how I came to that conclusion. And so, you definitely feel some type of way about the guys in your region.
Right.
So going into tonight, before we dive into some of the fun exercise and doing a mock ourselves, we all just watched the Brandon Beane presser, and I think it's so fun. Eric put out a tweet saying, when you watch him, it's great because everyone gets to confirm their bias. Everyone gets to have the takeaway that they want. Everyone gets to be more sure of what they're already saying because he covers every single base. So I'll go to you first, Aaron. Was there anything that you saw that changed your opinion of what we're going to see in the draft, or made you feel stronger, or something you already assumed?
I guess there's a little bit. So again, he covers all the bases, right? There was a little bit in that kind of conversation about looking towards the future, at pick 30, made me think probably not running back, right? Like you're not really drafting for the future at running back. You want that guy to come in, play immediately, run him till the wheels fall off, and then move on before that second contract. But then later, when pressed about is running back out of the first round, no, it's not out of the first. Like it depends how that board falls, So he covers all those bases. The injury, I think, information, him talking about not being able to necessarily get a look at guys with injuries, I think that's interesting. I think some people took that a little too far with saying those guys are off the board. I saw people talking about it on Twitter. I don't think an injury is going to preclude Brandon Beane from taking a guy if that's still a higher rated player on his board. So I think it's that kind of stuff. You find little things, you say, okay, maybe he's going to weigh injuries differently this year. But I don't think anything he said definitively changed what anyone has been talking about draft-wise.
Joe, what were your thoughts? Anything that you took away drastically differently?
Guys, I came away with an understanding that Brandon Beane is comfortable trading up. He's comfortable picking a player at 30. Wait for it. He'll also trade back. All three of those things are on the table for him. You wouldn't believe it. He confirmed it. I mean, just when you think this guy's trying to keep things close to the vest, he goes out and tells you that every option's on the table.
They're all good options.
Here's what I would say, and I don't think this is anything revolutionary. But Brandon Beane definitely affirmed, I think, a lot of what I've been thinking about. I'm sure Greg and Aaron and other people that we talk Bills with all the time is that he has a self-awareness about where this team's at. Yeah. And what I mean by that is the amount of money he's paying players like Matt Milano and Deion Dawkins and Trey White compared to what they've been making with these big extensions, what's coming for Josh Allen, what's coming for Tremaine Edmonds. And he definitely revealed that there was a need to get cheap labor on this team. He literally used the phrase cheap labor. And
right.
We've been saying that for a long time. Yeah. And so if anything, it was an affirmation that he understands the implications of this stage of roster building where we hadn't been here, guys. Come on. Like we've been building for 25 years. You know, a lot of times you get here and you got to go back. We're finally at that point where it's like you got to be mindful of the big picture because you have something. And so he definitely affirmed that we're at this point in the build, and that comes with maintaining cheap labor, which you get through draft picks.
Right.
So before we dive in, for anyone who isn't listening to Joe's draft work, you know, on the Draft Dudes or on Locked On Bills, you should be. But for anyone who hasn't had a chance there, you know, are there anything that you're out of the norm or what your top draft needs are going into tonight? You're going to put on the hat of Brandon Beane. You're going to be the Bills general manager with two plucky assistant general managers trying to convince you of who you need to take. What are the top needs you're looking at going into this mock tonight?
It's funny because I think I've spent a lot of time saying that the Bills are entering this draft with no glaring need. Every team has needs. There's always places you can upgrade. There's long-term things to be mindful of. But the more I think about it, I think there is a critical need on this team, and it's at cornerback. Right now, beyond this year, only Trey White and Dane Jackson, the only two cornerbacks under contract. Levi Wallace is back on a 1-year minimum deal. We know what the floor is with Levi Wallace. We know exactly who he is. He's not going to get any better. He's a low floor player. He's a passable corner for his own defense, but he really limits what you can do because he can't play man coverage. So because I'm not comfortable with the depth and I think he's an upgradable starter, I go into this thing saying, yeah, there's a critical need at cornerback. I don't know if a player is going to be worth it at 30. Here's what I'll say in the real draft. If the Bills pick a player at 30, whether I like him or not, and I hate to do this because it makes and analyzing things not really fun, they get the benefit of the doubt. Sean McDermott's been developing corners and DBs for a long, long time. His resume is off the charts. If he believes in that DB at 30, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. But I do think this cornerback situation is a little more dire than we might think. I would love to get some youth at defensive end. I'm always thinking offensive line. I always want to make sure there's good wide receivers around Josh Allen. And low-key, I think defensive tackle is a big need for this team. Like, we're hopeful that Ed Oliver realizes his ceiling this year. I think he's definitely has room to get better as a player. We're hoping that Star Latulippe can come back and be a passable one technique. He's been out of the game for a year. Harrison Phillips, what are we getting there? Vernon Butler has been a disappointment since he's walked into the NFL. These are your defensive tackles.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we're talking enough about that as a need. And so that's what's on my mind as we go into this thing.
Real quick before we jump into that, because there's a couple things that I want your opinion on while I got you here. We're talking about quarterback. I like that you did talk about a little bit that maybe you don't have to take that guy at 30. I agree that they have to be aggressive in addressing that position, especially for the future, but that there's scenarios where the board doesn't fall, where that is the best value at 30. I agree that you give McDermott the benefit of the doubt, but really I'm a long-winded way of getting into some of the values. Greg and I were talking about this. Something Brandon Beane brought up in his press conference that I think people don't always realize is there's not always 32 first round graded players, right? It's odd numbers throughout every draft, where some drafts you only have 18 guys that you have graded in the first round, and you're sitting there at pick 30, and so your board might not have first round guys, and you're looking at second round. And Beane talked about weighing some of those decisions. There's definitely points when I run through the mock draft scenarios where there's a run on corners early and, going into those 20s, Bills miss out on the top 3-4 guys at corner. there's a chance to get that fifth guy, and yeah, he could probably come in and do a good job, but there's value ahead of him staring at you on the board. How do you, as somebody that scouts these players and drafts this, think about that as a GM and weighing round 2 grades versus some guys that are sitting there that are better grade but aren't as big of a positional need? How do you weigh all that?
A couple things that come to mind, Aaron, as you asked that question. I have 21 first-round grades this year, which is a pretty normal amount, somewhere between 18 and 22 every year. So I'm right in my sweet spot. But you always all have to be mindful of, while you may have 18, 19, 20, 21 first-round grades, that doesn't mean that those are the first 20 players off the board, right? Because teams are going to look at this differently. And so while you may not have 30 first-round grades, that might be okay, right? Because there's no guarantee that those are the first 20 or 25 players off the board. So I think the Bills will still have a chance to get a guy that's a first-round grade on their board. But the draft is about value. And so while we might sit here and say corner, that's the most important thing, you can't ignore a better player at a different position, especially when you've been – I mean, you look at James Bradbury, you look at Josh Norman for when Josh Norman was in his prime, and I mean, so many countless examples of Tre'Davious White and what the Bills got out of him at pick 27. Levi Wallace, UDFA coming in. He's a passable friggin' starter in the NFL. You don't have to get your answer at 30, right? You don't have to find your answer at corner at 30. So you do have to be mindful of the value proposition. And if you have a first-round grade at a different position and that's your only one left at 30 and it's not corner, well, go pick your guy and figure out cornerback later on.
Yep.
And I love the way of approaching that. And you said 21 players for this year, and obviously one of them could be there. But I think people, they get it in their heads that there's this crazy line of demarcation at each one that, I didn't get a first-round player. Like, well, on your board, we could still get the 28th best player. That would mean he wouldn't be a first-round grade. It would be a value because we get the 28th best player at the 30th pick, but it might be an early second round grade. Like, it's all relative. People have these weird lines they draw where it could still be the right player and the right value, but it's all relative in where those things fall, because there could be, how about I ask it this way? Is there a round later on where you have more players graded in that tier than what's available in that round?
Yeah, I think the third and fourth round is where my grades really pile up. That's pretty normal.
I was gonna say that's a pretty normal draft.
I feel like more than usual. Like, just that's the sweet spot of this draft to get value. And I'm not gonna lie about it. I think 30 is not a great place to be picking. Yeah. I'm not advocating for a move up or a move down, but you're somewhat in no man's land to get exactly what you're looking for. Now, again, things can change. Like, there could be weird players that come off the board before the Bills, and every time that happens, it pushes a player that probably shouldn't be there to you. So if you're a Bills fan, you're rooting for 6 quarterbacks to come off the board and safeties and all kinds of stuff, because Pat Freiermuth, pray to God the Jaguars pick him.
Yeah, I'm just praying for I think you're going to get a run at corner or a run at edge.
When does it start? That's the question.
And that's when does it start? Yes. And who's left out of that pile when you get there?
Can we sneak in some extra linebackers? Can we sneak in some extra safeties? Can we get all the quarterbacks? Anything we can shove ahead of us that would be great. I want Jamin Davis to be a first round pick. I want Zayvon Collins for sure to go. I want all the linebackers to go. And the Bills don't need – so one surprise pick isn't going to change things dramatically, but the Bills probably only need a handful of surprise picks to have the right guy fall to them, where that's all I want. All I want is that the pick to be like, obviously it's going to be this guy. He's sitting there on the board. We're all sitting there crossing our fingers at 27, 28, 29, and he's left, and they pick him, and everybody's happy, and it's nice and easy, and we don't have to have this crazy debate. That's all I want, is a nice, easy pick to fall into our lap.
Well, that's the thing, is if you look at some of the teams picking right before the Bills, a lot of similar needs.
Yeah.
But you could start being like, oh, man, Greg Newsome. Damn it, Saints. Damn it, Browns. Yeah. There's just too many landmines.
Packers probably still looking for.
I've already warned fans that, there's a lot of things if you lean into the analytics world where we're bad at predicting who is going to get injured, because lots of guys get injured. So we think that we're really good at figuring out the guys with injury risk beforehand. And then draft picks are kind of a 50-50 proposition as it is. So a lot of analytics will tell you don't lean into that. You're going to be wrong plenty of times anyways, and we're bad at predicting who's injured. So I already can see Caleb Farley being there at 21, 22, 23, and we're getting excited. And they get there, and he falls into Andrew Berry's lap at 26, and the Browns take Caleb Farley. We're like, oh, all right, never mind. I've already prepared myself for it.
To anything, right? That's like the big advice. Don't marry yourself to anything happening. All the options are on the table.
Absolutely. Let's find
All
out
right, let's dive in and see what we can do here. Tonight, we are going to use a draft simulator that, Joe, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's from the Draft Network.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've seen this.
You've seen this. Good. So we are, for fans asking, we are going to leave the trades on. I think that we're going to try to do as Brandon Beane said, and if we have a good player there, we're going to stick and we're going to pick. But we are going to leave it up and see if anything fun happens. As usual, our guest will be Brandon Beane, and we'll make the final call. Aaron and I will be the assistant general managers, and we will lobby for players that we think are the right value to be able to choose. I will go ahead and start the draft. Here we go. I am a proud premium member of the Draft Network. I appreciate your guys' work, Joe. Off the board.
I never tried that, but that was a heart with my hands. That'll be the last time I try that. It's embarrassing.
I'm going to go ahead and assume we're not trading up with the Redskins here, so I'll take it upon myself to decline some of the quick.
While we're talking about that, though, because I've been doing some live ones with our buddy Pat Moran and doing these ones, when you guys are trading up, where have your kind of target spots? I'm assuming you're not trading up into the top 15 for trade ups. Where's kind of your prime spot that you're looking at, pausing, seeing where the board is when you run mocks?
I think 21 to the Colts, 24 to the Steelers. Those two teams, to me, really scream, we have a lot of needs and we have a lot of options. So that's where my mind goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add in maybe the Jaguars. I think that they're a team, new leadership, different pieces that they could be looking to just accumulate assets and pulling things up. But yeah, I think the Colts and the Steelers are both very, very clear ones.
Awesome. Perfect.
All right. So as we've talked about, I'm going to go through some of the key positions that we've already laid out. We have Ifedu Melifonwu, we've got Asante Samuel, Kelvin Joseph, Eric Stokes, all available at cornerback. At edge, we have what has become a very popular name lately, Joe Tryon. A little bit later here in our predictive board, Gregory Rousseau, Jason Owe. So we've got some solid edge rush options. Landon Dickerson, Creed Humphrey. At wide receiver, we did see Elijah Moore go, it looks like, right before us. Azeez Ojulari went right before us. Kwity Paye going right before us. So exactly what we talked about. You know, we're sitting there probably at this point, after Mac Jones, Rashad Bateman, and Alex Leatherwood go, we're ecstatic because the board is stacked with players we like. And then in a row, you see Jalen Phillips, Elijah Vera-Tucker, Trayvon Moehrig, Christian Barmore, Kwity Paye, Azeez Ojulari, Elijah Moore, and our head just droops.
Somebody's going to run, man. One of those positions. Yeah.
All right, so
look at that. Najee Harris sitting there, the top player on the board.
And Travis Etienne, both. So I'll go ahead and make the first case. I'll be Dan Morgan here. I think that with the work that we've done with Jerry Hughes, the rotational setup in the room, we want to get the next Jerry Hughes. We want to have somebody there that we think can step into that role and be that speed off the edge, that athleticism, that twitch, that bend. I think the Bills are in a good position to take a package of tools like Jason Owe, and I'm nervous like anybody else about the production and why he got pressures, in his 7 games this last year, but wasn't able to convert any to sacks, and even more the reason that it stands up to Jerry Hughes. But I think that bringing him along as a 4th pass rusher as a rookie and then being able to step into a prominent role, I'd make the case for Jason Owe as my pick for this round. Aaron, who's calling to you?
I'm not going to fight you about that. One thing I would want to know if we were in a war room is, with Harris and Etienne on the board, how willing would we be to move up if they stay on the board? Like, one of those guys is definitely going to probably slip into the 2nd round. And in this scenario, I don't have an actual board, but both those players are going to be higher on my board than probably whoever we're going to select. And I'm totally okay with going need and looking to the future, like Brandon Beane's talking about with this pick, because I think one of those guys is going to get into the 2nd round. It's not going to cost you a ton if you were willing to, if they're there. Would you be willing to if they're there. I think you could still get talent anyway, but it's hard for me to see that talent on the board and not take it.
61 to 42 is easier than 30 to 21.
Right.
Mr. Marino, where is your heart leading you? What would you like me to filter to?
Well, is this a situation where I am picking the player that I would want to pick, or is this me being predictive as to what I think the Bills would do in this scenario?
I think this is what you would want to pick. This is your show to be able to run where everything goes.
Well, I mean, I know what I want to do here, so if we're ready to make the pick, I'm ready to declare it.
Rock and roll.
And I got this down to two players that I was comfortable with. One of them is Jason Oweh, the edge from Penn State. He'd be a swing, right? But he's a worthwhile swing. Those traits are near impossible to ignore. Yeah. And for the lack of sack production that existed, he still made a lot of pressure. And disruption is production. So I'm not afraid of it. If the Bills picked Oweh, I would be patient and I would be interested. However,
and you're gambling on Washington, right? You're gambling on coaching, development, and
sure.
I'm willing to take that bet with Sean McDermott defense.
Yeah, and I might be a little higher on F.A. Obata than some people because I mean he's only a 1-year guy, but I look at Epinesa and I look at Obata and I have some happiness with that. Mm-hmm. It's not enough; you need more, but I don't think that's a completely devoid room of young talent. We'll probably add to it at some point here. But I go into this thing with a real, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, a real desire to get this cornerback thing improved. And if I have a chance at one of the top 5, which to me are Surtain, Farley, Horn, Newsome, all of those guys are gone, but Stokes is here. Eric Stokes, a cornerback from Georgia. I think he opens up the defense for you because he can play man coverage. He's a world-class athlete. He's got reasonable size. Watch the 2 Tennessee games over the last 2 years. You'll see ball production. He's willing to be physical. Just that guy that can turn and run with speed. I mean, you need somebody that can try to run with Tyreek Hill.
Might be the fastest guy in the draft.
Yeah, I mean those Jalen Waddle. Good chance he's a Miami Dolphin. What are you going to do with the guys the Bills have? You got to stay leveraged. You have to shift your defense to help Levi Wallace. If I have Eric Stokes, I have a guy that can turn and run. And so I think he provides an answer that the Bills need at cornerback, and that would be the player I would pick in this scenario.
I think it makes sense. It fits a need. It also presents you with a situation. I'm going to pause quick here. We did see
backs off the board.
Quick, but I do think that's an interesting scenario here where, I don't think it's going to be moving up to 34 back into the first round. But if all of a sudden you did see, you saw Javonte Williams go ahead of one of those 2 backs, and then you see someone like Travis Etienne or Najee Harris, or actually the players I was going to use the example for, Jason Oweh or Joe Tryon, you see any of those guys get into the 40s, all of a sudden now it's feasible that you could move up and get them. So that was a rough stretch there, all right in a row. But I think those are the kind of players that you could see someone step up for to take. And now adding Stokes, we're in pretty good shape.
Can you keep it paused here, Greg? Because I want to open up a talking point here on the running back situation. When you think about the first round options for teams to pick running backs, I think it's Miami at 18. The Jets at 23, and the Pittsburgh Steelers at 24. Now, the interesting thing about that is we have 3 top running backs, right? Etienne, Harris, Williams. All of those, well, not all of them, but 2 of those teams also pick early in the second round. You get the Jets at 34. You have Miami at 36. If you know that you really only have 2 landmines to get through, you're probably going to pass on that running back and count on one of those guys being there for you if you're the Jets at 34 and the Dolphins at 36. And so I can very much see that being the dynamic that exists with the running back market. I think the Bills are somewhat of a wild card at 30, but I just don't think there's enough landmines for those teams to be concerned about if you're the Jets and Miami, who it's their second first-round pick.
Yeah.
I just think they're going to wait, and I would be unsurprised if at 34 the Jets get Etienne and at 36 the Miami Dolphins get either Williams or Harris.
I don't think it's crazy that no running back goes in the first round and 3 running backs go in the top 40 picks.
Sure. Yeah.
That's perfectly feasible that none of them are first round picks. But would it shock you if the Jaguars, with their 3rd pick of the draft at 33, takes Najee Harris? Something like that?
I have cash on over a half running back getting picked in the first round. So,
so you'd like at least one of those?
Can we just get one, Greg, please?
Here's what I will say: all the people that have I'm not pounding the table for running back, but all the people that have been saying that these guys aren't that good are going to really hate when they end up in the division. And the Bills' poorest run defense has to deal with those guys in division twice a year every year. I'm all set with that scenario.
Dude, I bet it happens. I would. Two of those guys are going to go to the East for sure.
Oh, tough.
And the Patriots want to run the football. So, yeah, you better figure out how to stop it.
Right.
All right, back onto the draft. We are unpausing. It immediately offered a trade. And again, I think we just saw some of the players that moved up there. So let me know, Joe, if you see a spot where we want to move up. But right now, I think
everybody wants.
Yeah, people are excited. I can't even get off of the thing.
So we have our algorithm set because the Brandon Beane tends to be willing to move. If you're running the Bills, you're going to get a lot of offers. So if you're the Giants and Dave Gettleman's never traded back, you're not going to have the same experience. So little
totally. That's
behind the curtain.
And when I'm doing these on my own, honestly, my favorite mocks have been coming up, getting 4 players in the top 100 and calling it a day, and moving up, keep moving up. Package picks, move them up, and walk out of here with a bunch of contributors.
Well, and I do think it's interesting. We talked about it with the response of the presser with Brandon Beane's history. We understand that he's been able to move up for different things here and there. And we talked about it. Obviously, a guy like Chris Greer is very interested in the analytics and playing the game of moving back and forth. Brandon Beane is a talent evaluator. When he sees a guy that he wants, it's not as natural to be like, I don't like any of these guys. Let's go ahead and move back. Of course, guys who pride themselves on their ability to identify talent in the moment are more likely to identify talent and to see a guy that they think is the right pick. So it's not shocking that that's the situation. So just to kind of recap here, we did see the 2 interior linemen go late. That's a spot that you could see someone moving up. Landon Dickerson and Creed Humphrey both going quickly. De'Ami
I like
Brown,
Wyatt Davis.
Yeah, Wyatt Davis going just before us here. That's a player I'd be super happy if he made it to us at 61. Right. Joe, I know you're a fan of De'Ami Brown. What positions do you want us to take a look at?
Well, I feel like I know who I want to go with here, but if you can show me the interior offensive line.
And I will say, obviously we just talked through the 3 that I think are most popular: Dickerson, Humphrey, and Wyatt Davis. all would be on a wish list to make it there, even a trade up. Where are you on Quinn Miners? Is it coming out of D3, dominant at the Senior Bowl? Do you have him in that same tier?
No. I'm low on Quinn Miners compared to some of the buzz that's out there, thinking that he could be like a day 2 pick. Listen, if you played at Wisconsin Whitewater, I need you to be dominant. And you watch his tape, and there are moments where he is dominant, but when you can just get away with being bigger and stronger than other guys and technique doesn't matter, you got a curve ahead of you. And I think fresh off of watching the Buccaneers win the Super Bowl and Ali Marpet is from Hobart, and I think we just wanted that to be reincarnated in Quinn Miners. And I recognize that he's a talented player from a small school, and his belly was hanging out at the Senior Bowl, and everybody felt some kind of way about him. I thought he was more average than dominant at the Senior Bowl. I will say this, he's not for me.
Okay. No, and I think it's important because I think sometimes it's hard to separate the narratives and the stories from the talent, and then you compound that with lots of people, and I'm happy it's been a running joke the last couple of days about people who grind film, and I watched the tape and I scouted these guys, and most people are like Aaron and I, and we'll go and we'll watch a handful of games, and we know enough to be dangerous to watch a little bit. And then there's people like you and Eric and Russell and Christian who genuinely scout players and watch tape, and to hear that from you, that I think it's easy to let that narrative and that story get rolling, and the belly and all the fun things that go along with it. That's interesting to hear that you didn't see the same buzz that other people have seen.
Well, and if I can respond to Charles in the comments here, and Jim Nagy said that Quinn was guaranteed to be a second-round pick. That could be the case, right? There's going to be players in the first round. There's going to be players in the second round that I don't care for, and that's fine. But as an evaluator, you can't sit there and ride the fence. You got to have convictions about what you see on tape and what you think they could be in the NFL. And if just go back and look at any draft. All these players don't work out. Most of them don't. So if you got to feel convictions about the way that you extrapolate the traits, and
I like Nagy a lot, and I love what he does with the Senior Bowl. But at the same time, like the part of his role is to pump up the guys that attend.
He has a vested
like,
interest in.
Yes.
Yeah,
it matters.
What a good story it is if he invites a D3 guy there who blows up at the Senior Bowl after not playing and becomes a day 2 pick. That is a freaking sales pitch for him for everybody else for the next year.
Show me the interior defensive line, Greg, if you will, please. Okay. I know what I want to do. Are you guys making sales pitches here or what?
I'm not going to make any sales pitch, but let's see. Obviously, we took a corner. Where is corner here? Assume like just for the conversation of if we hadn't, and who would be there.
I'd like any of those 4 at the top there.
Yeah.
This is the problem I'm having with corner is one. I'm not going to do it with the first 2 picks, but I don't mind double dipping at corner in this draft. Edge is probably the same for me. I double dip at edge. But the problem I keep running into is when I do take a corner in the first round, that I always see the second round and I see that there's corners there too, and I'm like, I like those guys too, and I'd be happy to get one of these guys. So I think it's a good year for the Bills to have that need.
Well, so that would be the interesting. Obviously, everything's easy in hindsight. Now, knowing, Joe, I'll ask you this to put on the hat of hindsight, not what we're going to do. Knowing if you could have guaranteed yourself one of those 4 there that, hey, these guys were going to make it, would you have done anything differently at 30? Would you have gone with the edge there? Or do you like, I will say, when you look at the predictive board here, there's some pretty nice edges up there at the top. And a guy that I think you've had some questions on with Rousseau, but at 61, that's interesting with the traits. And I know you're a fan of Turner. Would you have done anything differently now, knowing who made it at corner, whereas maybe we would have gone with someone like Owe or Tryon at 30?
Well, I've done a few simulations on this mock draft machine, so I had a pretty good idea that those cornerbacks would be available here. Sure. But I think as far as going with Stokes within the back of my mind, kind of knowing that I'd have those guys available, what it came down to me was I did get a chance at one of those top 5. And I like these players that are coming up, and I think there's a chance that Tyson Campbell's in play for the Bills at 30. But because one of those top 5 was there that I really believe in, and the athletic profile that exists with Stokes that is just unlike the guys that are left, I wanted to go ahead and get that player and shift our attention to a different position with this pick.
And I will say I do like the edge players that are there. I think that this is a really enviable situation. If we go with one of those top 5 corners, and regardless, I'd be ecstatic with any of them. And I know you've talked with Bruce, and that I have Asante Samuel in that group as well, and would like to see any of those guys there. Now having these options at edge, I'd feel pretty good about that selection, and I'd be happy with any of them. I think I'd be hard-pressed not to want the traits of Rousseau, but I'd be happy with any of these edge here. Where are you leaning?
Yeah, so just one other point here on the why I went with Stokes at 30. Basically, when I was going into this thing, I was going to take between corner and edge, whichever was that last guy left. Who was the Phillips, Pay, Ojulari, Owe group of edges? If those guys were all gone, I was going to pick a corner, and then we go edge here, and vice versa. But the way that it unfolded, it set this up. So I do want to go defensive end. And the guy that I like the most out of these available options for the Buffalo Bills is Peyton Turner, the edge from Houston. And you want to talk about traits, 6'5", 270, long arms. He plays his ass off. I mean, this guy is – I wrote that. There we go. Just read that, Greg. That's what I think about him. I think that for the types of defensive ends that the Bills prefer, or Sean McDermott prefers, like he just fits. I mean, gives you some inside rush ability. What I really love about him is how hard he plays, but also like for a guy that's 6'5", 270, he's got really nice upper body flexibility. He knows how to reduce his surface area. He knows how to kind of press and lean into angles. And as pass rushers, if you can't reduce rush angles, you're in trouble. Think about Trent Murphy and how often we watch this guy rush the passer, just getting up the field, looping around. You're never going to get there. You create escape outlets for the quarterback. Peyton Turner can lean into those angles and still be able to take good rush angles because he has flexibility and core strength to really, really lean in and reduce rush angles and not have to be so loopy with his rush. For a guy that you want to take a swing on with traits, I like what Peyton Turner has.
So real quick, help us with the guy like Rousseau. Obviously, when he opted out of this year, he did not opt out thinking he was going in the third round. In our mock, he's about to go in the third round.
Yeah.
You're talking about a guy, we've seen it before with Grant Delpit. We saw it with Trey Adams, sadly. The guys that get hyped up like crazy early on. Hey, in Todd McShay's too early mock draft for, 2 years ahead, he's a top 2 pick. He's a top 5 pick. What came about with where you looked at the film? He's probably a guy that you were able to do last summer.
Yeah.
What did you see that now obviously you're picking Peyton Turner ahead of him, with him available on the board at the same position, and a guy that a lot of fans know the name of, and that in this scenario, I think fans would be like, oh my gosh, how did we pass on this guy who was a top 5 pick over Peyton Turner, who I haven't watched any Houston games. What did you see in Rousseau that now you're passing him here or aren't seeing what some of the hype was coming in?
So you go into summer scouting with Gregory Rousseau, just like I did, and you're like, wow, this guy's a redshirt sophomore from Miami, 19.5 tackles for loss, 15.5 sacks, 6'5", 260, just looks body beautiful. You find out that he played receiver and safety in high school, and you're like, okay. He had a lot of production. A lot of it was because he was unblocked, or, he just used his length and was able to disengage and get level with the football and finish. And you're like, I'm not sure he knows how to beat blocks or that he's a good processor, but this production, this size, his inexperience at the position, like you can see the arrows just pointing up, and you're like, yeah, this is a guy that we think with another year could be a top 10 pick. The other year didn't happen. Right. So he needed another year of tape, another year of seasoning and programming to get developed and show an NFL skill set. And that didn't happen. And so I have no choice but to kind of leave him how I found him. And I mean, as you get into the tape, you're like, I think I'd like this guy more as a Calais Campbell type guy that gets up to 280, 285, 5 technique. You rush him inside a little bit, have him attack the B gaps, and you feel like that could be his best utilization. Well, this guy takes a year off from football and he comes in at 260 pounds and he didn't even test that well. So he's compounding the questions.
Right.
If you're willing to wait, I'm sure that he has a ceiling to develop into, but I just like the trajectory of a guy like Peyton Turner right now more, if I'm the one pulling the trigger on these picks.
Yeah, and I think it is an interesting debate that you have in the draft room with the coaches, because I see scenarios where, like you described on Rousseau, you see a ceiling there, and you wanted to have a year of development, you didn't get it. But the Bills are a team, one of the few teams I think in the NFL that are in a position to add a guy. Like you said, there is still enough youth on the defensive line this year to roll into the year and not require production out of this pick to develop him, and then you have to believe in your coaching staff to do that. But it's a gamble still, and you're still gambling in the top half of your draft. That might be too much of a risk. Brandon Beane sort of talked about that, where you take risks is really like that 5th, 6th round picks. You're going to start taking more of those risks on ceilings. So I agree with you with this pick that if you're gambling on ceiling versus what you think you're going to get out of that person this next year and going forward, then you take more of the sure thing in your opinion.
I'm going to take a little wiggle room with what you said there, Aaron, and take an opportunity, if you will. Listen to these conversations that we're having about prospects and remind yourself of them when you're talking about current stage Cody Ford and current stage Dawson Knox and current stage Ed Oliver and current stage Tremaine Edmonds.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden they put the red, white, and blue on, and we need them to, or AJ Epinesa, we need them to realize their ceiling right now. I mean, I'm getting questions about AJ Epinesa if he's a bust.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Remember these conversations, please. Thank you.
Really healthy reminder. So we will officially lock in Houston edge rusher Peyton Turner as the Buffalo Bills' 61st selection in the 2021 NFL Draft. We now have it rolling. So now we've covered what I think is pretty universally agreed upon as the top 2 needs at cornerback and edge. We've really opened it up. We haven't taken interior offensive line. We haven't taken any offensive weapon. We haven't taken any defensive tackle.
Yeah.
So a lot of things available here. We'll go through some of those positions. Interior defensive line, have some options there, some names that are interesting. We have interior offensive line. Trey Smith is an interesting name. Kendrick Green. At wide receiver, definitely had some top players move off the board there, but a few interesting ones left.
Can I lean? I want to lean on my war room here between Greg and Aaron, because I have this down to 2 players. As you guys may have guessed, I kind of had an idea what I wanted this to look like. But this is that spot where the Bills don't have a 4th-round pick, and there's 2 players that I really, really, really want. One of them is Elam McNeil from NC State, an interior defensive lineman. This guy played running back in high school, 40 rushing touchdowns. You watch him play defensive tackle at North Carolina State, and he's playing like nose tackle on a 3-man front. And you see some moments where he gets a chance to penetrate and shoot gaps and get into the backfield, and you get really excited, but you also love the power that he has and the ceiling that he needs to realize still as a converted running back. But his flashes are really, really nice. I think he could be a really exciting developmental piece now and potentially a starter in time. The other guy is Kendrick Green, this interior offensive lineman from Illinois who could be an answer at center, could be an answer at guard. And we talk about this interior offensive line group, and what did we do?
We took Kendrick Green.
I meant to bring up his profile and selected him on accident.
Well, let's still have that conversation, though.
Yeah, let's continue this conversation. So you think about this interior offensive line. Hot take. See if Greg what he thinks about this. In 2022, I don't think that John Feliciano and Mitch Morse are Buffalo Bills.
It's not
what
crazy.
Do you think? What do you think? I mean, is that crazy?
It's not, and I think the structure for Feliciano's deal was very intentional, and the way that they were able to set that up and give themselves the options there. Whether they see him, I certainly didn't see a long-term center when I watched him play center, but I know some people did, and they gave that option. So if we see more to be able to compound issues with Mitch Morse, they have that option. But also I could see the opposite, that if they're ready to continue on with Mitch Morse, and we joked about this in other shows, Mitch Morse's birthday was today. How many people would think he just turned 29? Like, he's not an old man. This is not someone who's out to pasture. I don't think that's crazy at all. I think that's very much in play.
So I mean, Cody Ford at left guard, I'm optimistic, right? But at the end of the day, he's not proven anything. Like let's be honest. At left guard, we have no idea what Cody Ford is. We're intrigued. He has talent. We don't know what he is. Mitch Morse took a pay cut, restructured his deal. They have a reasonable out of his contract after this year. John Feliciano, as you said, 3-year deal, really a 1-year pay as you go. I think interior offensive line could become a need quicker than we think. And Kendrick Green screams Buffalo Bill, especially if they want to become more of a zone rushing team, which the numbers really indicated, comparing 2019 to 2020, that they're trending in that direction. Former wrestler in high school. I mean, this guy gets after it. Like, normally when you say zone interior offensive lineman, you think really swift mover, nimble feet, but kind of a soft guy. No. Kendrick Green gets after people. He's explosive into contact, and he has a mean streak. And he has versatility to play center and guard. So when you think about the need at interior offensive line, and you think about the need at interior defensive line, and you are excited about both McNeil and Kendrick Green, where do you guys side on that?
I would go interior offensive line. I think it's more of a need and more of an immediate need and into the future. I'm not really big on John Feliciano at all, and I would love to answer him not being the starter or pushing him this summer with a guy that you bring in. And a lot of these mocks, man, I'm going round 2. I'm getting Wyatt Davis. I'm getting one of those guys in round 2 and hoping that they compete for that job this year. I agree with you. I think there's a little bit more of a leash with Cody Ford. I'm willing to ride that out, see how that looks, see how he develops. Greg and I talk about this all the time. I can live with a perceived 1 weak link on the offensive line. I can live with that. I can hide it. There's some things you can do. Putting Mitch Morse next to Feliciano and Ford and going into the year with that does not make me feel great. I know that they had success as a team last year with that being the line, but watching Josh Allen run around in that AFC Championship game and watching John Feliciano just be a turnstile that entire game made this a priority to start looking to address, and I'm glad that you brought it up.
Well, and I'm going to add to that, Ron brings it up here. I do think that when you see those two players
Yeah, you
Joe,
can trade
it's an area here where, we can kind of monitor if one or two of these defensive tackles go off the board. You look for a team that is a reasonable trade target here with no 4th-round pick, but 2 fifths. You could combine maybe a 5th and a 6th, or a 5th, 6th, and 7th to move up here, snag McNeil as he's moving down, and still leave yourself maybe with a final 5th-round pick to be able to do something.
Do you guys believe that 7 rookies are going to make the Buffalo Bills? Like, I think this roster might be too deep to take 7 people out of this draft.
Now we're talking, boys.
There we
go. We're talking. It's like being at a restaurant. You want steak or do you want ribs? Or you want the combo and you get both.
Right.
We're getting both, boys. So I'm fine with the Kendrick Green, but I want to move up. I want to move up and go get a defensive tackle that I like in Elam McNeil. So let's do that. Let's do a trade up here.
Okay. Let's make an offer. We have the Saints on the board. It's not a division team. It's not someone who would be potentially threatening us. If we were, I did say the 5th and 6th, 7th. Would that be enough?
Nah, they're not about it, huh? Here's the thing, Greg.
I'm
willing to be patient over here. Let it run a little bit. Let's get a little further down. Maybe that Carolina pick at 113.
Okay. You're going too fast. You had it set on fast. That was a mistake.
I got to pause it quickly.
We're still good. We're still good.
Okay. Still on the board. He's still there.
Carolina. We love calling Carolina.
Yeah. I have a feeling that
not
Beane
even
still
a long
knows
distance call for me here in Charlotte. You know what I mean?
Right. So here, there we go. 5th and a 6th. They're happy to be able to do that move. Are we ready to make that offer, Mr. General Manager?
Oh, send it, baby. Come on.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much, General
Comes in, and now we have gotten both Elam McNeil and Kendrick Green.
The podcast will be uncontainable. What happens here? Show me those picks, Greg. I got to see them. I got to see them stacked up.
It's going really well. Eric Stokes, cornerback from Georgia. Peyton Turner, edge rusher from Houston. Kendrick Green, interior offensive lineman and guard from the University of Illinois. Elam McNeil, former running back and now defensive tackle from NC State. We're coming up with our 5th-round pick at 174. We'll see what options remain here. We still have 2 picks left.
Folks, I'm happy. All right. So
real quick, your favorite player, Rashad Weaver.
Get out of here. I kid you not. I watched him again today. I literally watched him again today because I needed to make sure, and I knew Kyle was going to cross-check Rashad Weaver, so I needed to defend my case on him. And I was like, all right, did I miss something here? He's a loopy, slow burn pass rusher.
The Bills. Have you watched the Bills pass rusher?
So are you not familiar?
Yeah, he's on brand. Sign him up. He fits the criteria.
So help me out here. I haven't watched enough of him to reconcile. Why do some of the analytics talk about so many productions within 2.5 seconds, and a lot of the analytics lean into what sounds like it should be an explosive pass rusher, but then the testing and some of the other things, why does it not net out? Where's that gap come from? Is it just scheme related breaks?
Well, yeah, I think the thing about that attack style pit defense that they ran, they had Jalen Twyman, they had Patrick Jones, they had Rashad Weaver, they had guys that get after it. But I mean, this guy tested poorly. Well, he had pretty good agilities, which surprises me. But,
so which is a sneaky one for the archetypes for the Bills. They like their 3-cone and their short shuttle for edge rushers.
It's just not for me.
Yeah.
That's fair. But this is one of those where when I'm doing drafts, I said there's a few positions I'm willing to double dip. This is one of them. Edge is one of them, and Weaver's usually sitting there for me. So if he is a guy that's for you, I think it's totally reasonable that the Bills double dip at positions that need. That we know the draft's a bit of a crapshoot. If you take 2, like, you're guaranteed somebody's going to work out, right?
To me, with Weaver, he has a good inside move and he uses his length well. But I think to really be a pass rusher that matters in the NFL off the edge, you have to be able to win around the outside hip. And I just don't know that he's polished enough at the top of his rush, that he's loose enough to be able to really turn and bend the outside edge track. So, again, we could laugh about my Rashad Weaver takes in 3 years. That's fine, but
it's not for you.
Yeah, he's just not for me.
Yeah.
So who are you looking at?
I was gonna say we've now checked most of the boxes.
Yeah.
We have cornerback, we have edge. We haven't taken a weapon, no offensive weapon, no running back, no wide receiver, no tight end. That's an obvious one. We've taken Stokes, who I think is pretty universally only an outside guy, probably not a guy you're looking to move interior. He's certainly not a safety. We have right now, we only have Jaquan Johnson under contract. Yeah. Josh Thomas is technically a roster player right now, so I know safety is an interesting one.
Safety was where I was going to request you to show the board.
And I know a player I have no recollection of other than hearing you talk about him. Tell us a little bit about Derek Forrest. Who is this guy?
Safety from Cincinnati. I'll tell you, if you look at the cross-check grades, I am higher on him than my colleagues at the Draft Network. But I think he's a really physical player, and I love his trigger, his willingness to attack and fit the run. I think he's got reasonable zone coverage ability, decent ball skills. You're not going to ask him to play a lot of man coverage in the slot. That won't be a big forte of his. But when you have Poyer and Hyde, who are converted cornerbacks, if you really feel like you need a safety to come down and play man coverage, like, okay, you have your options. If you want to go 3 safety looks, this is a guy that can fit into what you're doing. But I'll tell you, if we're going to pick a safety, we are running out of options here,
Yeah.
So that's something to be mindful of. I do want to see the corners because Taron Johnson, we don't talk enough about his contract being up after this year.
So here's another one that I know, obviously it's hard to decipher if Russell likes him or if he's just a Michigan State homer. But Shakir Brown was one that he was a little surprised was as low as he was in the rankings here. What were some of the question marks you had with Brown?
Hold on 1 second. I'll tell you exactly what they are. 5'9", 185, and he runs 4.64. I mean, 7 percentile 40-yard dash. His 10-yard split is a 1.65. I mean, that's like an okay time for a defensive end.
Yeah.
I mean, his agilities are both in the 21 and 31st percentile. Come on.
So you're saying he's perfect for Sean McDermott?
No, I need Sean McDermott to fundamentally change what he values in cornerbacks because, dude, if you're gonna stay connected with shifty slot receivers, you have to be a better athlete than that.
Yeah.
You just have to. But I like some of these other I like Avery Williams as the slot corner. Scroll down a little bit, see what else is down there. Brandon Stevens is a fun player. I just watched him. Converted running back at UCLA. He needs a ton of work. He's like a 7th round guy. I really like Avery Williams. He's going to be tough for me to come off of him. I like a lot of these receivers. I like Shai Smith.
I like Shai Smith a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I like Asimi Fehoko as like core special teams size, like height, weight, speed guy. He's super interesting to me.
I will say a lot, but I've been getting him. Where are we? Round 5. I've been getting him later, but I do like him a lot I think people are sleeping on the fact that he didn't have the production that you expect with Trevor Lawrence, but it's there, man.
Talk to me about Jalen Darden. He's a player that I've seen. He might have the widest range.
Yeah,
I've seen. Like I have people who are stomping that he's a mid-second round pick, and other people nah, he's in that. In this mix that we're talking about here with all the kind of the small scat back guys and the little slot guys here in late day 3. Help me understand why are some people so excited about him?
The production. We're talking about Jalen Darden, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, crazy production last year. Whenever guys are fast like Darden, I mean, they could be late round guys and they can also be TJ Graham 3rd round picks. You know what I mean? Like you just never know who buys into these guys. I think he's a bit underdeveloped as a receiver. I think this is about the right range where I'm comfortable taking him. But I just think with these types of small school speed receivers that are kind of underdeveloped with crazy production, they're just tough. They're difficult to project. And so I think that's why the variance is there. You
get Shai Smith with Cole Beasley for a year or two, learning how to run routes. That could be crazy dangerous for you to replace that.
Yeah, and I like a lot of these receivers that are left. The problem is I don't like a lot of the corners that are left. And so, do you guys know about Avery Williamson?
Not much.
So. No.
Oh man, let's stop and allow me to preach the gospel of Avery Williamson. Just give me 1 second. I got to pull up my notes because I got to give you this information the right way. Avery Williams. So he's a slot corner from Boise State, 5'8", 187. Right, he's not a big guy, but ran 4.4, good agilities. But all right, so this past year, the last 2 years, he's the Mountain West Special Teams Player of the Year. He had a punt return for a touchdown, 2 kick returns for a touchdown, 2 blocked punts, and another that was returned for a touchdown. That was just this year in 7 games. In 2019, again, the Mountain West Special Teams Player of the Year, blocked an extra point, blocked the punt, and had 2 punt returns for a touchdown. In 2018, he blocked the field goal and had a kick return for a touchdown. In 2017, 2 punt returns for a touchdown. Oh, by the way, he could play a little slot corner? Let's go. This is one of my favorite day 3 players in the draft.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point because I think this is the tough part. We talked about how good this Bills roster is and maybe not even been able to take 7 players. Not only are you not going to be able to take 7 players, once you get past the 3rd round, 4th round, like these guys are going to have to be special teams contributors if they're going to stick to this roster, like even as a 5th round pick on this team. And that's something I think that in a lot of these shows that I do gets overlooked because I'll tell you right now, I don't scout special teams side of players. I don't understand special teams all that well. I don't know what I'm looking for. And so for you to bring that up, I mean, I think it's really important when you're weighing these picks is, can Heath Farwell do something with these guys year 1, and then we develop them at their true position as we go?
Well, and this is the time of the draft where Farwell is sitting there pounding the table. He has
the weight,
yeah. This is, and for everything you just rattled off, Joe, this is the kind of guy he's jumping on the table, begging them, please give me this. You took Andre Roberts out from my bosom, and I had my safety blanket, and now give me back Avery Williams. I think that's an outstanding pick.
Turn it in, brother.
Beautiful. I like it. We have 1 selection left because obviously we traded our other 5th and 6th to be able to move up for Elam McNeil. So as we let it run down here, we're really.
If I'm picking, it's like Rafi picking in fantasy in the league. Or I don't know this guy.
Eric Stokes, outside corner, outstanding athlete, tons of speed, played in the SEC. We got Peyton Turner, big toolsy edge rusher, 6'5", 270 coming off the edge. A big, mean, nasty guard, Kendrick Green, coming out of Illinois. A versatile, athletic defensive tackle, Elam McNeil, not just a one-tech guy, somebody that we have more options than that. Now we got a special teams player, can play some nickel corner, probably back up Taron Johnson initially, but can maybe be a day 1 returner in Avery Williams. And now we have all of our options open. Again, we took the returner guy, so that's maybe not as much of a need from an offensive weapon, but some bigger receivers here who are interesting.
I like Powell right there still. I've been doing that a lot. I think he's a guy that could give you something this year, but doesn't have to because the Bills are so deep there, and that it provides you a little bit of the buffer. With you, Beasley's aging. Emmanuel Sanders isn't a young dude. Like there's going to be a cliff for this wide receiver room where you have to inject some youth here to keep developing that pool. I mean, the 7th round pick might not even stick on this roster, so why not get a guy that could possibly develop as that receiver as your guys are aging out?
So I'll make my case for you, Joe. When I just did an exercise, I got to represent the Bills with 32 different folks doing a mock draft exercise. When it got to my late round pick and I was trying to take stabs, I read some of the different sleeper lists, guys that were out there. I like to use RAS score if you're going to bank on things. I like Jacob Harris, guy out of UCF that I think is the number 1 RAS score in the database at wide receiver. Crazy combination of size and speed, but obviously was a late conversion over as a soccer player that went to UCF. Were you able to watch him at all?
Yeah, I did him this week. This week has been about filling in the board with the Jacob Harrises of the world.
Sure.
And so yeah, I think this is, if you're going to get into Jacob Harris, who I kind of like the idea of thinking about him as a move tight end type player that I can get behind it. I mean, his yards per catch was crazy, right?
Yeah.
Significant production down the field. So
yeah, I feel like these are the guys that Twitter gets real excited about, undrafted free agents that you're hoping your team's on the phone with to be a project.
I like him way better than the Charleston receiver, Michael Strack. Is it Strack?
Strachan, yes.
Yeah,
well, I was going to ask you about him next because he's the other guy that everybody loves from Twitter highlights.
Rough tape. Watching him try to stack corners from like West Virginia State was kind of rough. So I'm not a big fan. Can you show me the tight ends?
Yeah.
I want to look at a couple things here. All right, those are going to be hard passes all the way across. Can you show me the safeties?
Yeah.
man, that's the thing is like you can't check every box. I would have loved to have gotten a safety, but here's the thing, and that's why I did some segment of Locked On Bills I did recently. I talked about some of the veterans that were left in the free agent market at safety, whether that's Trey Boston or Jaleel Adai or Gibson. Is it Taquan Gibson or Tashawn Gibson?
Tashawn Gibson.
There's a lot of vets out there, man. Just get one of those guys. Like
safety and corner. There's actually a sneaky amount of corners left on the market. It's weird.
Right. So I'm not going to panic. I'm not just going to pick one of these safeties. Darren Hall's interesting, but no, we're not going to do it.
I would say we just had some work on him. How about another name that I know that, like Rashad Weaver, we joked about. I know you weren't as high in Jacoby Stevens as what some other guys are. What were some of the holes that you were concerned with? Was it just the athleticism?
If you give me an oversized safety, I just want you to be physically imposing. I want you to be a tone setter all the time. And I wanted more from Jacoby in that regard.
Makes sense.
Can I see the offensive tackles?
Mm-hmm. Jarrett Patterson there?
No.
You were not a fan of Patterson's name.
No, I recorded Thursday and Friday's Locked On Bills today, so I don't remember which one it was, but I talked about Patterson. Okay. I think he's discount Devin Singletary, and that's not a good thing.
I think they're more similar than people like, and it's hard. Hometown, record-shattering year, everything that's there, but I do think they're very similar players. So have you done work on Josh Ball? The traits are pretty crazy.
Oh, yeah, he's a good player, and I like his tape. Man, his off the field is like...
sketchy.
Oh, man. Probably the most concerning player in the class.
Okay.
Crazy history of domestic issues. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So that's obviously somebody that obviously is not going to check some boxes for this locker room.
No, wouldn't think so. Show me interior offensive line. This is an important pick, right? Because this is the next pick. This is the only pick we get to make until 2022. We got to hit a home run here. Oh, man, I don't like these players. Okay, so I'm a little torn, guys. I'm a little torn here. There's two players that I like.
So I will say from a trait standpoint, I'd make the case for Jacob Harris. If we're throwing a dart, I want that dart to be 6'5", 220 that runs a 4.4. Mm-hmm. So if I'm throwing a dart, also if I want a guy to get off the first off the bus team, Cornell Powell, just don't give him a shirt, just let him walk off the bus shirtless. I think that would be a good look for the team.
He looks the part, and that's one of the hardest part for these young wide receivers is to have the NFL body. Right? Like, dude, he's got the body already. I don't know. I love him.
Brandon Smith, his muscles have muscles. I saw him at the HOA Combine in South Florida a few weeks ago. That dude's just crazy, like physically. I just body beautiful for sure.
Okay. Well, I just saw one of Jamin Davis, like with his shoulder pads on, and I couldn't tell where the abs stopped and where the shoulder pads started. Right. Like it was just all weird, bumpy. It's crazy. These guys are built in a way that doesn't look real.
Show me the running backs.
All right.
One of my guys is there, Jared Dokes.
Okay.
We're not going to pick him though. We're not picking him.
6'1", 225. That's a big boy.
Yeah, he's a power back that like he runs angry, and he hasn't had a ton of pass catching production, but he has like no drops ever in his career, and he's really good in pass pro. Like I think he's this year's James Robinson. Well, you're probably like, well, pick him. What are we talking? Yeah. Pick him right now.
How about the most home cooked 40 I've ever seen?
Oh, God.
Deion Jackson.
Dude, Deion Jackson's in my region, so I know him, right? Brother, when he was the 4.38 they tried to tell us? Yeah. Okay, bud. I bet you have some oceanfront property there in Durham to sell me as well. Come on,
right.
Now.
Here's my thing on the running backs in this class. And again, I'm not pounding the table, but if I'm not walking away with one of the top three guys, I'm good. Like the Bills running back room, I'm okay with it. Like it's fine. I can run with the running back room they have. But if I can leave with what I perceive as a guy with elite traits, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm fine with the room.
Are any of these guys bumping Matt Breida off the roster? Probably not.
No. Okay. I think I want to go Cornell Powell. I think he's a player that the Bills are going to like. Late bloomer at Clemson. I think a fifth-year guy. I remember whenever he started making plays in 2020, I'm like, oh, there he is. There's the next one. It's T. Higgins, Sammy Watkins, DeAndre Hopkins. Cornell Powell must be 18 years old. Nope. Right. Fifth-year guy. And you're like, oh, okay. And then the thing about him is as he started to make plays he continued to make plays. He continued to show up week after week. And once, Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID, and I can't even say his name, DJU or whatever that guy's name is, the backup quarterback, like you could tell he was used to throwing to Cornell Powell when he made plays in that Notre Dame game. And then when Trevor Lawrence came back in the lineup, he's like, okay, I'll throw to Powell, and he kept making plays. Special teams pedigree. There's a path to the roster for a guy like this. And I think that you look at him and maybe he can be wide receiver 5 for you in 2022. And for a 10 personnel offense, that's valuable. So Let's go Cornell Powell and put the cherry on top of what I think is a really, really good haul.
You know what I like about this draft the most, and I was thinking about it really after we went to your defensive line with McNeil there, is people were hammering, asking Brandon Beane, how do you use the Chiefs and losing that game, and what do you have to address? Well, I think you do here, and that's my favorite part about this draft is you get that speed at corner. But I think the biggest thing after watching that Chiefs game too many times is the lines. I think the lines, both sides of the ball, need help. I think they need an injection of youth. I think they need help with talent, because I think that's where the Bills got beat the most. And I think you address most of your concerns with dealing with the Kansas City Chiefs with some young talent.
AQ, you've watched the AFC Championship game again? I haven't.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't done it. Have you done it, Greg?
I haven't. I honestly haven't.
I was a little surprised when you said that. I was like,
I haven't brought myself to do it.
We're watching it again?
Oh,
I will. I will. I haven't
know.
done it yet. I haven't done it yet.
I'm not going to watch it.
Really?
No. I know what happened.
Yeah.
I know what happened. I don't need to relive that. I don't need to watch Tremaine Edmonds get moved off his spot left and right, and him and Pat Mahomes throw the football right behind him over and over again. I don't
many times that he was in the right spot and they're rolling. All right, I can't do it. Oh, and he forces him to choose. He forces him to choose, and he takes the 2 steps. And right when he takes the 2 steps, Travis Kelce's right behind him, and then he does that 6 times. It hurts my brain.
Dude, do you know how hard it is to play linebacker in today's NFL?
Oh,
the whole entire offensive game plan is predicated on putting you in conflict, and no matter what you do, you're wrong.
yeah,
Right.
Oh,
it's got to be disheartening.
So, but bringing it back to a happier topic here.
Yeah, let's look at this draft.
Let's recap our draft. With our group selections here, they turned out really, really well. We went Eric Stokes, cornerback from Georgia, super athletic at pick 30. Peyton Turner, toolsy edge rusher out of Houston at 61. Kendrick Green, a mean, nasty guard at 93. We then traded up, and we traded a 5th-round pick and a 6th-round pick for Elam McNeil, interior defensive lineman from NC State at 113. We then kept our other 5th-rounder, got Avery Williams, 2-time special teams player of the year in the Mountain West from Boise State, kick returner, punt returner, and nickel cornerback. And then jacked up receiver Cornell Powell in the 7th round. A really nice haul. So, Brandon Beane, how are you feeling about this draft?
We just trusted the board. We stayed true to the process. I want to thank all the scouts that have been involved and working hard since last May on these prospects, and just went out and got a bunch of guys that's going to fit. And, I'm excited about getting these guys in the building. We're going to show them Niagara Falls, and they're going to make a hat at the New Era Stadium, and you're going to watch that YouTube video and get all excited about these guys, and really like what we were able to do.
It's a stellar impression. That's really, you probably hit on 80% of the words he's going to use.
Right, don't you look forward to that? The Bills draft players, you want to hear the really bad audio phone call that they do with the New York media. You're listening to that, right? You stay up to like 2:30 in the morning waiting for that to get posted for the 5th-round pick. Then they come to Buffalo. They go see Niagara Falls. There's a really cheesy video that you watch. They go make a hat. And you're like, okay, let's go. You want to see what they look like in the colors? Right? Come on, guys. This is what we do in May, right?
When you talked about it, there's other things that not only the selections, some of the things of the vetting that they do. So obviously the questions that came up on the draft with the health thing and being uncertain, that makes me feel good that if all of a sudden there's a weird fall for Caleb Farley or Jalen Phillips or whoever it might be, and then they pull the trigger, it's reaffirming for me that, well, if our health and safety, our health and wellness guys and doctors signed off on it, he must be good. This is great. We got a great value. Yeah. So it'll be reaffirming that direction as well if some of those picks come in. But
I think this draft and these conversations, some of the best things about these types of podcasts isn't always the draft. We had a great draft, but it's the conversations at each pick, right? And then bouncing off ideas. Because when you're doing these mocks alone, you kind of have your own views, but having these ideas to bounce back and forth. And what I keep finding is especially with those first 3 picks for the Bills, there's a lot of options. And because of the way this roster is built, they've put themselves in the ability to take the options when they're available to them. And even if we didn't get these particular guys, there was probably 2 or 3 guys in all those rounds that I would have been happy to take at those spots too. So I think the Bills are in a really great position, at least to add 3 guys that could possibly contribute this year. And all those drafts I've been pretty happy with so far.
Yeah. So, Joe, and any final words for the people? Help us out. What is your last week like here? You're leading up to your Super Bowl. What are your plans for the live draft? Are you going live with the team over at the Draft Network?
Yeah, we've got a week. So this is we get started on Monday, and we are going to be our studio is in Georgia actually, with do you guys remember the sports science videos on ESPN? John Brink's like, Brinkman, Cam Newton's hands are 11 inches, and you hold the football, and he can do these 85 things. So that guy's studio, where you saw those things happening, we're going to be down there broadcasting live, and I don't have the full schedule; it's still being fleshed out, but I mean, it is like all day, all week. So we are going to be. God
bless your wife.
We're gonna, she's amazing. We have a lot of planned this summer to make up for this week, and actually, we're going to be. I'm going to be out of town this coming weekend. I'll be up in the Delaware area for a baptism. My goddaughter is getting baptized on Sunday, and then I'm coming back and going to Georgia. And the next week of my life is nuts. So that's why I said I recorded the Thursday and Friday Locked On Bills podcast today. Those are already done. They're ready to publish, and next week is just going to be. A lot of fun. It's going to be busy. It's going to go quick, and then we'll breathe a little bit in May.
That's fantastic, man. Thank you so much. It's been a great show tonight and a lot of fun to be able to go through everything. We checked a lot of boxes there. You helped us understand where your process is. Aaron, help us. Where can the fans find you?
You can find me. Well, tonight I'm going to go to bed right after this. It goes past my bedtime. But no, you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716 and just giving Greg a hard time wherever possible.
So anyone who's not listening, make sure you're checking out Draft Dudes. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Bills, checking out Joe's work at the Draft Network, senior draft analyst Joe Marino. Thank you so much for tonight. You've been listening to the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and we are out.